All right. Well, welcome back to the Azure Podcast. This is episode number 499, being recorded on the 11th of July, 2024, with special guest Prashant Nayak. I'm Sujit, and on Teams with me, we have, of course, our special guest, Prashant, who we're going to get to in just a minute. But before that, let's cover some news from this past week in the Azure space. And Prashant, if any of these news items interest you, feel free to kind of jump in and offer your comments as well. One of them, AKS is a big focus for us, of course, across all our application workloads, and I guess debugging networking issues on AKS can get pretty difficult, right? As in AKS runs on a number of nodes, and of course, we've had traditional tools that can help you do the node level troubleshooting, right? Maybe a node can't connect to the VNet or whatnot, or can't connect to the internet or some firewall. But kind of understanding what's happening inside of the cluster from a networking perspective has been difficult, typically, especially at the pod level. And so they've added this new advanced networking observability add-on for AKS, so you can kind of add that on as a plugin into your AKS cluster. And when that does, it sort of pushes out a whole bunch of new metrics and details through either through Azure Monitor or through Prometheus into your dashboard. And now you can get pod level kind of metrics, like, hey, how my DNS queries running at the pod level. What about my, level 4 connections? Are they working correctly at the? So it's going to give you that insights into pod level, into pod level networking, which I think would be very valuable. Another update that's come up has been in the load balancer space, right? And so a load balancer allows us to connect like a number of VMs, right, and kind of treat them as one, right, as most customers would do. But the requirement has always been that the load balancer has to be in the same subscription as the VMs, right? Sometimes it has to be co-located. And as you know, Prashant, I'm sure you see this a lot with the corporate customers, is that they have a single subscription for all their networking stuff, and then they have other subscriptions for their workloads. Like typically each operational unit or OU or business unit might have their own subscription for their workloads, and so this becomes a challenge. Right? How do you connect those networking components, which includes load balancer, to these VMs? And now the new update is it allows cross subscription access for the load balancers connecting to these VMs. So now you can have all your load balancers and your VNets, blah blah blah, etc., into the main corporate managed subscription, and then the individual business units can have their own subscription with the actual workloads, the VMs or whatnot, and then you can still do that load balancing across that. So I think that's going to be pretty interesting to use.
That's a preview feature, though.
That is a preview feature, correct? Yep. Still waiting for that. But we can start kicking the tires on that one now. And then in Databricks, of course, is something that's always very interesting and popular. The problem with Databricks is that if you use it for any kind of workload, you have to create this cluster, right? This Databricks cluster. You got to create it. You got to start it. So it's kind of a dedicated cluster that you have, and sometimes you're probably not using it as much as you need to, and you'll probably waste all the kind of your kind of compute money on just keeping it going. And now what they've done is they've added a whole bunch of serverless options for Databricks, right?
Yep.
So if you like, for example, if you have to run a Databricks job, you can now connect to a serverless compute, right? If you use the notebook feature in Databricks, you can also connect that to a serverless instance, so that just when you open up the notebook and you're kind of running the Python script or whatever it is that you're running, that's when that serverless instance will get used. And if you do like a data pipeline, as they call it, a DLT in Databricks, that too can take advantage of these serverless. So I think this is a nice kind of facility to help us consume or make more efficient use of the compute in Databricks. Spanning Databricks compute servers, as you know, are huge, right? Typically, you've got some massive GPU kind of 8-core, 16-core machine, and those things are expensive. So anything we can do to help there is good.
Any cost optimization, my customer will love it.
Great. Well, so that's well the updates I have, Prashant, and yeah, let's turn the mic over to you. Please introduce yourself to our listeners. Let us know what you do at Microsoft and what your passion is, what you're working on these days, and we'll take it from there.
Thanks, Sujit. Hey, my name is Prashant Nayak. I've been with Microsoft almost 17 plus years now. Just over the hump now. Sujit and I, we go long back in our
Yep.
times. Uh, good times, bad times, and best times at this point with AI journey that we are leading in the industry. My job is at this point, I'm part of CSU, what we call it, Customer Success Unit, and one of the organization unit that newly formed 2 years ago is SDP, which is a software and digital platform where all the ISVs, SaaS, and digital natives uh, vendors is hosted in Azure, and we support them. And ISV business is a very, very cost optimal kind of business where we want to help them uh, increase their margin, increase their revenue, and so on and so forth. So my job is on the infrastructure side, help them as a CSA, customers cloud solution architect, and help them realize their potential in Azure. And we go from very beginning stage to the end of the stage, making sure that they are successful in the entire cycle.
That's right. Yeah, CSA is a core part of our success in any customer. I know that. But is there like a specific workload that you feel you're spending more time with these days? Some things that you feel more excited or passionate about?
Yeah, absolutely. These days, with Broadcom acquisition, a lot of customers are trying to get into cloud with VMware on premises. So my most of the time spent into Azure VMware solutions that we offer today. A lot of customers, due to various reasons, they are able to either not renew it or issues with the hardware refresh. There are many different reasoning that they want to get to cloud as soon as possible, whether it's a renewal for their data center or they want to modernize it. And especially with the AI, they want to get into cloud so that they can leverage all the services that Azure offers. Azure offers almost 200 plus. The other advantage they are seeing is we're the only cloud provider with 33 plus data centers across that offers Azure VMware solution. We're the only leading cloud provider that's provide that much of reachability for Azure VMware solutions at this point. So much more time spending in Azure VMware, which is very exciting times for us to help our customer modernize.
No, that's good. I know we've had a few shows in the past on VMware on our VMware offerings, but let's maybe just take a minute or two to give our listeners a little bit of background into what AVS is, right? And we'll call it. I guess that's the way we will refer to it as AVS, Azure VMware Solution. Give us a background into what it is, what's the problem space that it's going after, and then we can kind of talk about it in context with this Broadcom acquisition.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Azure VMware solution is basically a managed first-party service from Azure. We provide all the managed control plane for VMware solution. Hence, customer doesn't have to worry about patching their entire suite. Also, the hypervisor that we provide from VMware is managed by Microsoft. We also provide a lot of security related, protection for the customers that typically they have to manage their own on their VMware assets. So when they come to AVS, we provide a lot of those security protection. Also, cost optimization is one of the biggest one because we also offer 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, and even now we are also giving them offer of 5 years of reserve instances where they can commit and save nearly 50% on the commitment to protect their usage on AVS. And the other thing is AVS also is basically a dedicated hardware allocated for our customers. Although it's a multi-tenant system, but we have a dedicated certified hardware from VMware that hosted in within Azure.
Right. And VMware, if I remember correct, Prashant, is that this is a way for them to run their own virtual machines in a virtualized environment
Correct.
inside of Azure, right? So Azure obviously has our own virtual
Yes.
machine infrastructure,
Mhm.
but if the companies have, bought into the whole VMware hosting model, and this is an alternative way to host those their virtual machines inside of Azure. Is that correct?
Exactly. Yep.
Right. Now, how does this play in terms of and that's very helpful because now I understand what you meant by the using OpenAI and all that, because now that, if they're running it in Azure, they can obviously take advantage of OpenAI as well
Yep.
in these virtual machine and virtual environments that they host in Azure. How does this play into the Broadcom acquisition? Like, what's the kind of news over there?
So in general, Broadcom has stopped renewing the perpetual licenses for VMware, and there are certain use cases or customers is thinking that maybe they may get some little bigger bills over the time when they try to renew it. So there is some uncertainty around how much they're going to, get into the renewal rates and stuff like that. So what we give them is a offer that they don't have to renew that license, but they can use. Part of AVS is we provide them that license because it's already built into it, and that protects their sort of investment, the existing VMware assets.
So Broadcom I guess it's a data center provider. Is that what they were or are? Is that how you describe them?
Yes, they are a bigger company. They are dealing with the networking and data center and other related hardware business. But they, acquired VMware as big, $69 billion deal. And during that time now, VMware under the Broadcom arm, they have changed the licensing for VMware customers.
Got it. Got it. So, what are some of the, like, if you were to kind of look at some of the advantages of, let's say, if customers, forget about the licensing and costing,
Yep.
but, from an infrastructure management perspective, what are some of the advantages that AVS would give them? You mentioned, like, the security is something we take into account, but what
Yep.
are some of the other things they can come to expect if they decide to migrate to AVS?
So first of all, they don't have to manage their own hardware, right? As the beauty of the cloud. At this point, if they are hosted on their own premises or even some hosting providers, they still have to manage, maintain, update the latest and greatest hardware. Where when you come to cloud or Azure, especially, we keep up all the hardware refreshes, and they don't have to worry about what kind of chassis I need, what kind of power supply I need. All those things goes away immediately. So that's a kind of easier for them to save on capex, right? The other thing is the control plane that I keep talking about. Control plane. So there are four components in VMware solution. There is a ESXi, which is the hypervisor. Then there is a vCenter. There's a software that runs on managing all kinds of um, uh, the servers, manage the update of the servers and stuff like that. The third piece is NSXi or NSXT, I'm sorry, that manages the networking part of this. This components that I'm talking about, and the fourth one is HCX, which is a migration platform. All these components as part of VMware has to be managed by the customer in terms of managing the update cycle, managing their patching and stuff like that. So in this case, we manage pretty much all the software side of this, and configuration part, this is a shared responsibility model for a customer. They have to manage their own configuration, but they don't have to worry about the underlying control plane.
I see. So you mentioned there is a migration tool or feature available, right? So what does the migration process look like if you're, let's say, you're with VMware today or you're with Broadcom and you want to migrate it off? What is the process to typically entail?
Yeah, so typically what happens is there are two ways to do this. VMware offers this is a part of VMware, and one of the beauty of AVS is we already provide a license inbuilt into AVS that they don't have to buy extra licenses, such as HCX. HCX is their migration platform or migration tool that you can leverage part of AVS, where um, once they so the typical scenario that I'm working with the customer is that first of all, we work in hand with them, going over all the pillars of we call it well architected framework, where we go into uh, five pillars, cost, security, architecture, and everything that we talked about, that we go over with the customer. Once they're ready, they will start with POC. But when it comes to migration, we help them to have HCX running with their on-premises VMware with the AVS VMware, and the HCX will allow you to migrate. Either you can do bulk migration or you can do cold migration. That is basically how and they do a phase migration based on how the customer requirements are. One of my customers, they have moved some of migration in a non-production environment first, and then once they're successful, they go into production environment. So they use HCX basically, essentially.
I see. And does that require you to take like an outage at some point, I suppose, right? Because you are doing this migration. How fast is it? I'm expecting this is primarily the actual VM virtual machine images or whatever that have to be copied over, right? That's the most time-consuming task.
Yeah. Yeah, it depends on the bandwidth that you're using. It depends on the networking that you're using. But typically, what we have seen, so AVS also allows you to use ExpressRoute, which is a faster connection. Most of the customer that I work with, they already have an ExpressRoute connected to Azure. We can leverage that for the migration path. At this point, one of my customers has on an estimate, and this is all varies between various customers and the connectivity and stuff. So we have around 1 GB pipeline, and then we were able to move close to 35 to 40 VMs within 3-4 hours, let's
Hmm,
say. So it depends on, of course, now again, there are multiple various factors. Is this express route is used by other application or not, whether
right.
it's been shared by others or not. So we have a dedicated one, so that just worked for us. Also, the other thing is how much big is these VMs are. So it all depends.
Right.
But it is pretty, I would say, fast.
And from from the person using the VMware, let's say, we have some app teams at the customer that are, have their workloads running in VMware, right, within the company. And now they've done the migration, let's say, or maybe overnight, over the weekend they did it. What is the user experience for those teams? Do they have to, I don't know, repoint to various endpoints? Like, what changes from their perspective?
Literally nothing, to be
Oh,
honest. So it's pretty seamless, and you'll be surprised. Now, it all depends on how, some customers wants to retain their IP addresses. Some customer can just get a new IP address. It all depends, but typically it is quite seamless. However, I would say there is a caveat is one of the things that we learned lesson is you definitely want to work very, very closely with customers' networking team,
mhm.
because that's very important to understand various gotchas around, hey, how routing works or how. So there are two things. One, so there are parallels in Azure world with VMware, so such as NSGs, right? We have a network security groups. They do have network security groups, but it's a little different concept and differently deployed inside of VMware. They can do NSXT related stuff. So it's not one-to-one kind of thing. So if you already have existing VMware running fine with everything is in place, all you migrate, right? And then all you have to do is just your DNS change, and voila, it just pretty much seamless. Now, when I say seamless, this is all thanks to the networking team behind the scene, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
But there's not like a lot of. lot of convoluted things to worry about.
How about security? How does that change from the end user perspective? Because, obviously we have a whole different security model in Azure. We use RBAC and whatnot. I don't know if that even comes to play, or do they need to have an AAD account? Like, how does that work? Or
Yeah,
intra
so
AD,
there are,
sorry.
yeah. There are a couple of ways to do this. A lot of customers has already existing identity running on Active Directory, so they want to just port that.
Mhm.
And the other thing is a lot of customers already syncing their Active Directory to AAD, so
Mhm.
you can exactly. It becomes very easier. Most of the customers, that I work with, they're already syncing with us in terms of Azure Active Enter ID, and they are able to leverage the existing ID to just use those.
I see. Okay, so
That's
those,
another additional added value, right?
right.
Because then you don't have to reinvent the wheel to, hey, how do I put the IDs again and stuff like
Correct.
that.
Authentication is kind of works, continues to work seamlessly.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
And then, I mean, this is just my ignorance around AVS, of course, but, how does things like observability and all play into, how does that work, like in typically in AV, in an VMware solution, and how does it work differently in AVS?
Great question. So in AVS, you can also, there are a couple of things. One, AVS by itself allows you to leverage our monitoring platform that you can leverage log analytics, event hubs, and storage accounts and stuff like this. So typical monitoring stack that we can leverage. The other thing we also offer is Azure Arc for VMware, where
Mm.
what it does is basically projects your VMware assets into Azure so you can kind of manage the life cycle of VMware VMs from Azure. Uh,
Oh, so
and
you may have
also,
some in AVS, some not in AVS, but
yeah,
you kind of looking at all of them with one control plane in Azure.
exactly, exactly.
That's cool.
And that comes free, by the way. That's also interesting piece of this, right? So why not? So
Yeah.
that's one of the way to kind of view your assets under
Correct.
VMware.
Especially if you're still migrating it, you obviously have many of the maybe split, and then you
Yeah,
can kind of migrate them one by one or whatever at your own
exactly.
pace.
So that's how you can leverage the observability of various. The other thing we also do is we allow to export syslog out of VMware because VMware has also its own logging, but
Right.
that you can also export it to log analytics and you can run, various reports, workbooks, alerts, and things like that.
Right. Right. It's all running on Linux, and so all those logs can
Yeah,
be exported out. That's cool.
absolutely. Yep, yep.
Yeah. So you've already mentioned some kind of gotchas and whatnot, but are there any like tips and tricks that you would recommend to customers who may be thinking about this service?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, you need to make sure you have there. So typically, we want to make sure customer is ready with what we put first thing center is a networking team, right? We want to definitely make sure that they are, full on with setting up the networking first, testing it out. Uh, so the way we also work, and I just want to give a little bit of a glimpse of how we work also. We work as a team in Microsoft. We have multiple units. Sometimes we have to go deeper into networking. So we involve our global black belt team. I want to give big kudos to our global black belt team for VMware solutions. They are very handy when it comes to deep networking or deep AVS related. So first of all, we want to make sure you connect with us CSAs or technical specialists. We talk about the general design architecture. We go a little deeper in making sure that, hey, the team on the customer side is equally, understanding what they are looking into. However, I'm not going to say it's difficult, but it's better to understand how various networking piece works because one of the customer that I work with, they have different requirements for different customers. One is external facing, was an internal facing. Then you need to kind of have, maybe dedicated pool of AVS, not mixing together sort of
Right.
thing. So those are some strategy that you want to work the first thing. Secondly, you would also want to make sure you have a quota available in certain regions. There are certain quotas that you need to get allocated before you spin up
Mm-hmm.
your AVS which is not a big deal. You just open up a support ticket, and it'll be, within less than 24 hours, you'll be given a quota, and then you can go from there. That's another gotchas usually. So you want to check which region you're targeting and what kind of. The other thing we also do is there is something called RV tools that part of the VMware solutions that customer can run that tool, or you can also use Azure Migrate appliance that runs on your VMware state and then can give you output of what kind of matching cluster you would need in Azure. So
I see.
once you assess that, you will be able to then sometimes, and this is a perfect opportunity for a customer. I advise many times is like, okay, this is a great opportunity for, don't do garbage in, garbage out, right? It's like as if you're
Clean
moving
it
to a
up
new
now.
house,
Right.
you want to get rid of older things. A lot of times customer realize, oh, I don't need these 14 VMs that are just sitting idle, or, save money from there and those kinds of things. The other thing, we also ask them to save money on bringing hybrid benefit usage, right? They can save on SQL servers or Windows Server licenses that they can port it back to the Azure, and so they save it that too.
It's a good. I just suddenly thought of this. Is there a concept of auto scaling when it comes to AVS? Can customers kind of take advantage of the elasticity that Azure has?
That's an interesting point. At this point, no, you have to
Yeah.
do manually because again, this is also, think about this. This is all VMware
Correct.
hypervisor.
Correct.
So
They need the
in,
dedicated set of
in
nodes
essence,
running.
yeah, in essence, you have to have the auto scaling part of the VMware suite. So Azure has less control over their software, sort of. So yeah,
But if you do need VMs, it's just a matter of just
yeah.
having the quota, and then you get snapped in right away. So
And
it's
then you
not
can
like you have
always
to.
scale out. Absolutely. Yeah.
Sure, you can scale down if you want to. Yeah.
Correct. Correct.
Yep.
Absolutely. Yep.
Very cool. This is great, Prashant. Yeah, I feel like I understood a lot more about AVS than I did at the start of this session. So
I mean, it's
that's
an
good.
exciting time. Like I'm telling you, a lot of customers are really looking into getting into AVS, and we are one of the largest providers that is, first party service. And when it comes to support, we are always there. And Broadcom is work with side by side with us for any deeper issues.
That's awesome. Well, thanks so much for taking the time to explain to us all these new and exciting things with AVS. And
Thank you.
yeah, we'll
Appreciate it.
look forward to having you again sometime in the future.
Oh, absolutely. My pleasure.
Thank you.